Welcome in to Down the Line with Charlie and Bo. I'm Sam Wilson. You may have heard the saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, today we're going to put it into baseball terms, and what happens in the clubhouse normally stays in the clubhouse. But today's guests are going to give us some of those behind-the-scenes stories. Stay tuned for more. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's main streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreet.com.
All right, we got Charlie and myself here, and we got two guys here that, in my opinion, special people. First of all, they had to put up with me and Charlie. And I'm going to start with Al first, and then, of course, we'll go to Frank Kopenbacher. But Al, that's a tough gig for you. 2001, my first year as manager. I would say I was a little high-strung. Would you?
Absolutely.
So what were your first impressions? I want you to be honest. What were your first impressions when you saw me get on the bus and you're saying, ooh, this could be a tough gig, or I'm going to have a lot of fun with this?
Well, my first thought was, I look at your face, a very stern face. I said, well, I got to do everything to the T. And but it ended up working out good. You're a very great guy, and I enjoyed working with you.
Well, you know what? I appreciate that, because I'll be honest with you, there were times after a tough loss, my gig back in Philadelphia, I didn't like losing, as you know, and Frank knows, and I know Charlie knows. But for the most part, I wanted to apologize for all my mood swings when I was managing, because you did put up with a lot.
Yes, sir, no problem.
Now I'm going to go to Frank, because you were with Chuck during the World Series run. And what was your memory that stands out with Chuck?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I think the night of winning the World Series is by far the great memory. But there were some great times all over the league. A lot of laughs, funny stories, long bus rides to an airport or whatever. And you know, of course, it's always my fault if it takes a long time to get there. And you know, it reminds me of one though on you, Larry, with Al. We were going to New York after an afternoon game here in Philly, and there's a lot of traffic, you know, not only leaving Philly, but all the way to New York, and you've never been known for being that patient to begin with, so you started complaining about Al's driving, and Al's like standing there, you know, he's sitting there holding the steering wheel and these gigantic forearms and biceps, and you're complaining. And finally I said, hey Larry, you sitting right there, tell him yourself. I'm not going to tell him. And Al's shoulders bouncing up and down. And so every once in a while, even when some of the years that you weren't here in Philadelphia, we'd bring that up once in a while just for a laugh. And you know, Al, remember when Bo was complaining about your driving, you know, that can you hurry up, you know, that kind of thing. So.
Absolutely.
What do you got for him, Chuck?
I got, first of all, Al's probably the best bus driver I ever seen, and he used to drive fast, but he was very trustworthy. But at the same time, Frank used to complain all the time. He'd say, Al, how come you didn't turn right there? Or Al, hey, we can get out over here. Hey, Al, what's up? And so I started every time when we leave or someplace or go somewhere. See, Frank was always the last guy on the bus, and I'd be sitting there telling Al, I said, I want you to get on Frank. I said, Frank's been talking about you, and I said, I want you to tell him I'm going to pinch your head off, things like this. And I set him up, and I told Frank, when he come home and get on the bus, I said, "Hi, Frank, there's Al. Tell him what you told me." I said, just a little kid stuff. Hey, I said, "Al, what do you think?" And I do remember one day Al said, "I'm driving the bus."
Wow.
He said, "I'm driving the bus."
I like it.
That reminds me
I'm
of
glad he was too.
that reminds me of my buddy Vuk. When a couple times I would say, like Frank said, "God, where are we going? Let's go, Al." And Vuk would hit me and say, "Bo, you see his arms?" I went, "Yeah, I better shut up." But we had a lot of fun there. I mean, even though the bus trips and everything, I wanted to ask you in particular, the generation, you're still driving bus. In fact, you were driving the Sixers, right?
Yes,
From Washington.
yes.
Did you see a big difference in attitudes with the generation now as opposed to when I managed or Chuck managed?
Yes, absolutely. The main thing is communication. They don't communicate with each other. A player get on the bus, put his headphones on, sit there, doesn't say anything to anybody else. And to me, a team, that's a good time for you to be bonding, talking about what you're going to do during the game, but that doesn't happen nowadays.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
That is
good.
really good.
Yeah.
And you know what? And we see that, Chuck, you and I going around watching the minor leagues and that. They put the headphones on. And to me, when you unite as a team,
Right.
it's one-on-one.
Yeah.
You're talking to each other, but it's a different way. Frank, have you seen a difference?
Oh yeah, I mean, even when I was still working, guys that would arrive early. So many of them would just bury their head in the iPad or laptop or whatever, or listen to music, and there was little conversation near the end. In the afternoon, not a lot of card games and stuff like there used to be in the old days, and just guys sitting around talking to each other. So. And after the game, they seem to get out of there a lot faster.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that happens a lot.
It's just the way it is.
Let's reveal some stories here. I have one that stands out in my mind, but I'm going to let you explain it to him. Vicente Padilla. Let's share with our audience that story.
Well, one thing I want to say about Larry is he had his moments, and there were times that, it might not have been that easy to work for Larry, but I will say this, he always had my back, no doubt. And we had a situation where we were going to Montreal, and I would remind the players verbally, I'd put signs up all over the clubhouse, bring your passport, bring your passport. Well, we get on the plane, and Padilla calls me to the back of the plane, tells me he doesn't have a passport. So I go up to Larry, I'm like, "Larry, I don't know what you want to do, but Padilla just told me he doesn't have a passport." He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Open the door." So they opened the door of the plane, and he told him to get your you-know-what out of here and get your own way to Montreal tomorrow. That's how it was handled.
That's how we did things back then. You know what? We're going to share some more of these stories, and we'll be back right after this.
They're not just familiar faces, they're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home, where personality is served on a plate and imagination paints a brighter world. A place where fresh is always in stock with a personal touch passed down through generations. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
All right, we are back, and let's continue with some of these stories. Frank, I heard you got one on Charlie here.
Yeah, some years ago we were out on the West Coast, and we had a night game in Los Angeles, and we're heading to San Diego. So on that trip, very popular, lots of wives. We had a lot of front office people. I remember David Montgomery was on the trip, and so we had a third bus, and we took the wives and the family that was along, and the club executives we left a little bit early for San Diego after the last game. So I took the early bus to make sure everything went okay at the hotel, and Phil Sheridan, who's the Phillies clubhouse manager now, he brought up the rear and got everybody out of the clubhouse, all the players and coaches and Charlie, and got them on the bus. So we're all checked in San Diego, and an hour and a half goes by, and there's no sign of these guys. And I figured they'd be maybe a half hour behind us. So I finally call Phil, and he answers the phone. I'm like, Phil, where are you guys? And I'm thinking maybe they got in an accident or something. He goes, you're not going to believe this, but Charlie made the bus pull over at In-N-Out Burger, which is a popular fast food place in Southern California. And we had about 250 burgers they had to cook right on the spot. So we've been here for a little while. We'll be there.
Yeah, people were hot, like they were hollering. I remember Wheels and some of those guys that was on our bus. They were hollering and said, "What kind of minor league move is this?" and all that stuff. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
A little smart. Hey. And I stood up and I said, "I am a minor leaguer." I did.
And the manager.
I said, "I am the minor leaguer, but I'm also the manager." And I said, "We stopped because I said stop."
That's right.
But at the same time too, when we got to the hotel, I don't remember how many burgers I bought, but at the same time, every one of them had been eaten.
Yeah, I know, because I was looking for one, and there weren't any left.
And all those people that were mad, they definitely ate a burger.
I can believe
telling
that.
you. 10.
I can believe that.
And I made a statement. I said, "Well, you ate them because they were free."
Yes. Hey, well, we had something going back in the day when we had pools, whether it would be the Kentucky Derby, the Indy 500, or the NCAA basketball tournament. But one stands out in my mind because it reminds me of my old buddy Vukovic on the NCAA pool, the basketball. Frank, why don't you share that with us? This is some money involved here now.
Oh, yeah. So this was, all the players and the front office people down in spring training, the bracket for March Madness would come out. So the sheets would be handled down in the clubhouse, and we'd get a big participation there on guys wanting to be part of the pool. So we had a spring training night game somewhere, I don't recall where, but I didn't go on the trip, and I sat in my office and filled out my brackets. And I don't know why, but I filled out this bracket, and I'm like, this thing's gonna win it. This is a great bracket, which everyone has always said when they filled out their bracket. And there's a place on there where you put your name. So I wrote Frank on one of them, and I decided to have some fun, and I wrote Vuk on this one. And Vuk hated basketball, didn't want anything to do with the March Madness or any of that. Well, the first day, that Vuk pool won 15 out of 16 games. And I said to him, I said, Vuk, he had this thing called the baseball board. It was a bulletin board with all the schedules for the events for the day and what field you were supposed to report to and all this. And nothing could be up there. No real estate, no notices for Bible study or anything were allowed on there. Only Vuk's baseball information. So I went to him, I said, Vuk, I know you hate things being on the baseball board, but I said, I did this, I wrote your name on it. I said, I think this thing's got a chance to win. Let's just have a little fun with it. So I said, and go along with it. So I said, I think I can get Bowa on this one. So he went along with it, and Vuk's in first place on day one, which infuriated him.
He never watched a game in his life.
Right. Well, the next day, the thing won like 15 out of 16 again, and I'm like stretching out my lead on everybody. Well, I won the pool, or Vuk won the pool, before the final game was played. It was over. So we get on the plane to head to, I don't know where we were going, the first trip of the year, and I had this big envelope full of the money, for all the pool winnings. So I get on the microphone. I said, now, Vuk, before I said, I'm going to present you with the money. And I said, I'll just come down to your room and get it later. So I get on there. I said, I want to present John Vukovic with the winner's share of the March Madness pool. And Bowa is so mad. He's sitting in his seat, just still in disbelief. And Vuk has been telling him the whole spring, I don't know, my son and I, Vince, we just started getting into basketball, and I just got into it, and I don't know how I'm winning, but I did. So we present Vuk with the money. Vuk gets the envelope. He whips out a couple hundred, and he used to sit next to Chris Wheeler. He goes, thanks, Frank. He goes, here, this is for this cheap guy, Wheels, who never gives you anything. And then he goes, and I appreciate the winnings. And months went by. We never said any different. One night on the plane, we're talking. Larry hears everything, by the way. And he overheard us. He goes, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, well, you know that pool thing that Vuk won? He didn't really win. I won. He's like, oh, he was not happy. He was not happy, but it was a good one.
It was. It got me,
Yeah.
and to this day, my buddy's up there, and he's probably still laughing at that, what happened during the NCAAs. But we're going to have some more stories when we come back right after this break.
John, what's your favorite Larry Bowa story?
Well, I want to preface this by saying that I learned how to play baseball because of him. But when I was in San Diego my rookie year, they sent me out to Las Vegas where Larry was managing. And so I left that day, drove up to Vegas. I walk in the next day and he's like, what the hell are you doing here? You got 3 days to report. I said, but I want to play. I just want to play. I'm tired of sitting around watching, doing nothing. So I was 6 days, I couldn't make an out. And I was hitting everything, line drive here, line drive there. And Jack McKeon calls, our general manager called and said, hey, we're bringing him back up. And he goes, he said, don't let the stats fool you. He said, he's blooping stuff. He hadn't hit a ball hard all the time he's here. He said, you might want to keep him here for a couple more weeks. And I'm like, so that night, he told me that story, and I hit a triple. And I slid into third, and he was coaching third. And he goes, all right, you're going back up to the big leagues. I'm like, perfect, but I love him. And, we had a lot of guys from San Diego that were indifferent because, he told the truth. A lot of people didn't want to hear it, but I learned more about baseball from him. And we text during every freaking game. He texted me, oh my God, but he's the best. And I love him to death. But yeah, he tried to keep me down in AAA for 2 more weeks. Because they were making a playoff run. I said, man, keep me down here. That's not right. But we made it. And then he got to be manager. That was the best. So when he got fired, I called him and he said, you want to play in Philly? I said, yeah, better than here. Who wants to leave San Diego to go to Philly? He said, I'll go when I go back. He said, I'll make sure we get you over here. So the next June, I got traded to the Phillies. So. He made my career. He's the reason why I played and did what I did, because of him.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
They're not just familiar faces, they're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home, where personality is served on a plate and imagination paints a brighter world. A place where fresh is always in stock with a personal touch passed down through generations. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
We are back, and we're sharing some stories with our public out there, and some of these, this is the first time anybody's ever heard these. So, Al, let me ask you something. What was the greatest moment when you were the bus driver for the Phillies that stands out in your mind more than anything else?
It would have to be the winning of the World Series and the day of the Ashes Parade. We dropped everybody off at one point, and then all the buses went back to the stadium. Then once the parade was over, they got on our bus, and we went from our stadium to the Eagle Stadium. and so many people out there, and we got this big dump truck in front of my bus that cleared the way, and we were just riding. I'm sitting filming as I'm driving, all the people, you know, it was a great moment, great moment.
Well, you know what, you didn't have to bring that up, because that moment, Chuck's team beat the Dodgers, who I was coaching 2 years in a row. So I'm happy for you, but I'm not happy for the Dodgers. They put us in our place 2 years in a row. And Chuck, I know you were really happy about that.
Yeah, of course I'm happy about it.
I was happy too, Larry.
I'm sure you were. That check came in
That's
handy.
right.
Hey, I played a little while with the Dodgers, and when I was a kid growing up, the Dodgers were my favorite team. And I'm talking about, I was about 6 or 7 years old, in the lineup, I can run down my lineup right now. We don't have time to do that, but I knew every player on their team and everything.
Wow.
And it's a big deal for me, you know, when I got traded to them, really. But beating the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium,
I'm
yeah,
sure
I
it
like that. That was really good.
I got one more to share about Frank, and this one, it's when he first came over. Lee Thomas brought him over. All we ever heard when he came over, well, the Cardinals did it this way, the Cardinals did it that way. And you know, Luke and I are in the clubhouse. I said, I'm sick of hearing about the St. Louis Cardinals. And so every time we would talk some strategy, Frank would be hanging around, whether he's picking up towels or getting something for one of the other coaches. And I told Luke, I said, hey, Luke, you know, we better be careful what we say. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know, Frank might be running everything we're talking about upstairs. So one day we're talking about a player, and Frank's standing there. So we get done talking, and Vuk looks at Frank and he says, hey, Frank, why don't you run that upstairs? And I looked at Vuk and went, oh, and Frank goes, let me tell you, both of you guys, something. If I ran everything upstairs that you guys have said, you guys would have been fired 2 years ago. So that's how we got to know Frank, that he was on the up and up, that whatever would happen in the clubhouse between the coaches and manager, it stayed down there. But we did get a little tired about the Cardinals, but you had a right to talk about the Cardinals. You had some good experiences there.
I was there during a good part of Cardinal history too, in the 80s, and it was a first-class organization. And you know, in my opinion, we needed to do a few things different. I'm not talking about on the field, just the physical clubhouse and things like that needed to be more modern, more major league, if you want to call it that way. And so, yeah, these guys, they give me a hard time that first year almost every day. Run that up. I feel like it's really ironic that, God rest his soul, Vuk ended up upstairs and Bowa's up there now. I wish I could run some stuff up to him right now.
Well, you know, I want to hear I've heard bits and pieces of the Father's Day story.
Oh, yeah.
Was that was with Charlie?
Well, it started a few years ago. Well, I don't know, probably about 08. Where it was Father's Day weekend, and Phil Sheridan was on the trip with me, and we were out in San Francisco. And Greg Castriato, the Phillies PR director, he loves both Larry and Charlie, but Charlie was sort of like a second father to Greg in a lot of ways. So Phil and I are having dinner, and on the way back, we're walking back to the hotel, we pass this drugstore, and I say, hey, Phil, let's have some fun with Greg tomorrow. Let's get a Father's Day card and write a bunch of mushy stuff on there and put it on Charlie's desk, because I know Phil's going to be out there before me, and sign Greg's name. So we did that. and you know, Charlie walks in, from what I was told, I wasn't there, Phil was watching, and Charlie sees this card and he's like touched. He thinks it's from one of his kids. And you know, he opens it up and it's all this, oh, thanks for teaching me everything I know about baseball. All this ridiculous stuff, signed Greg. So this went on for 2 or 3 years. In fact, one year, Bonnie Clark was on the road, and we did the same thing to her with a Mother's Day card, and I slid it under the door of her room on Mother's Day and said, just play along when you get to the park. So she walked right in. Oh, Greg, thank you so much. That was the nicest card I ever got. He goes, I didn't send you a card, that blankety blank over there did. He knew immediately where it came from, and he didn't know anything about it. But the best one was we were in Seattle, and it was Father's Day again. And Ted Walsh was the Mariners equipment manager at that time, had been with Charlie in Cleveland. And he can impersonate Charlie better than Charlie can do. I mean, if he calls you on the phone talking like Charlie Manuel, you think it's Charlie Manuel. So I'm in this store downtown. I'm looking for a Father's Day card, and I find this one that you can record your voice. So I get it, and I take it over to Teddy, and we laughed for 3 hours. We couldn't even do it. And so it says, like, record your name. So he gets on and he goes, Charlie Manuel Jr. Like he pushes the button and it records it. What's your favorite TV show? Hee-haw. All this crazy stuff. And so now we take it into Charlie on Father's Day, and Charlie's sitting at his desk in the visiting clubhouse in Seattle. And he opens up this card, and I've never seen Charlie laugh so hard in all my life.
Belly
He's
laugh.
pushing the button. His tears are coming down his face. It was classical. It really was.
All right, we're going to continue with this, but we have to go away right now for another commercial, and we'll be back right after this.
We'll be right back with more from Charlie and Bo. Well, guys, we told you what happens in the clubhouse doesn't always stay in the clubhouse, and these guys can't stop talking about it. For Charlie and Larry, I'm Sam Wilson, and we'll catch you down the line. Down the Line is brought to you in part by the Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board. Visit Montgomery County's main streets. Find out more at makeitmainstreet.com.